What do you think, Cecil? Little 2003 Truckers to bring you in. You like that? All right on a Tuesday.
That stretch. They just had such songwriting power when Isbell was in the band. Decoration Day. You can get in such a prolonged argument. It certainly could be the best one. It certainly could be the best of all of them, even Southern Rock Opera. Because Decoration Day is a little more. There's a lot of power on a single disc.
Absolutely. I'm a little more. I think it's about just a matter of personal preference when you go through those three. You can't go wrong with those three records, and I probably like the trilogy to Buford Pusser on Dirty South, with Cottonseed, Buford Stick, Boys from Alabama. But you can't go wrong with any of those three, man.
No, you can't. They're all great. I was thinking about what else was big in 2003, and
Outkast.
That Outkast, hey but college football before 2003 was not the same as college football after 2003. And do you know why, Travis?
Oh gosh,
Seven Nation Army.
Oh yeah. White Stripes. That was pretty much about it. What?
A basketball game.
Oh yeah. And it seemed like, and we're going to have Hey Ya for you later in the program. I mean, if you're going to do a 2003 playlist and you don't have Hey Ya,
no, you got to have that.
You heard that every 7 minutes. And I think it made the rotation at Bryant-Denny Stadium into 2006, 2007. It seemed like it anyway, didn't it?
I think so. I think I've heard it on the big speakers. But yeah, that was we almost all singles now are pop singles. If you live in the world, but in 2003, you still had videos. Probably one of the great video and cover songs of all time. Certainly one of my favorites. Johnny Cash's cover of 9 Inch Nails, "Hurt."
Oh yeah.
Probably you can make an argument that's the last great video, truly great video. And so, also, guy who's on the no playlist for a lot of people, but R. Kelly.
Remix
Ignition. So,
you're
just a lot of that's a lot of really good songs.
You're right about the Hurt video with Johnny Cash, though. You talk about being able to see a lifetime in a man's face artistically like that. That was a one of a kind effort there.
It was, and a cover that nobody expected.
Would have ever expected.
9 Inch Nails are very. Nobody's expecting 9 Inch Nails to play the Grand Ole Opry, but Johnny just showing what a powerful performer Johnny Cash was, that he could take that song and make it his own, without diminishing the original. So
2003 wasn't a fun football season for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
No.
We require. I mean, you ended up seeing, though, right, the two teams that played in the BCS championship game that year here in Tuscaloosa, Nick Saban with Alabama, Bob Stoops with Oklahoma came through here. And then, of course, with it being Tennessee week, that infamous, from the Alabama perspective anyway, 5 overtime loss at Bryant-Denny.
Yeah, probably right up there with Notre Dame in '73 and a few others for the most painful loss, just because of everything that surrounded it, and because of the fact that Tennessee converted a 4th and 19 in overtime, and one of the most painful losses, I think, for Alabama fans. And what wasn't going to be a great season regardless, but that would have been a great win, and just slipped away.
I think you had a 2nd and 1 for the Alabama offense too, right? Late in that game, I think if you convert that, and man, Shawn Williams was such a gutty little player, and a guy that we probably don't talk about enough in terms of his contributions in the time he was here. But yeah, you had a couple of situations on both sides of the ball where if you just make one play, you end up winning that football game. Cecil,
right,
let's talk.
Which would have been big for that team in that season. Sure. A lot of people still remember. That's not ancient history, but 16 years ago, the players don't remember it. I'm sure, but there was just so much emotion, so much of the NCAA stuff and so forth. That Tennessee had a long win streak and would have been cathartic for Alabama if they could have won. I think if you do the rewind, Alabama would take the way it turned out. Let Tennessee keep the streak for another year and then break it in 2005, and then the reversal came in 2007, obviously, and when it came, it's come with a vengeance. So I think Alabama fans would accept that, but at the time, 2003 was a devastating loss for the players and the fans, I think.
In terms of dominant teams, that 2003 LSU team that came through here, as far as coming through Tuscaloosa, where would you put that one maybe for the last 20, 25 years? And, that wasn't a team that ran the table, but in terms of what we saw here in Tuscaloosa, because we did see OU that year, and we saw LSU, we saw Tennessee. I just thought LSU in particular, that was one of those games where the scoreboard didn't look that bad, but you could have played another 20 quarters, and LSU wasn't going to be threatened.
No, and couldn't stop them. Couldn't stop Josh Reed from catching the ball, and at any point that he wanted to. And so yeah, they were good. I don't, the Oklahoma game that year. I mean, I thought Oklahoma was good. I don't remember thinking, oh, that's a dominant team there. I don't remember thinking of the 4 or 5 teams that have ever rolled into Tuscaloosa or Birmingham, thinking that Oklahoma team was up there. Southern Cal 78. Now that was a heck of a team. That was a heck of a team. And LSU 2003 was really a good team. So, but Tennessee is. I always wonder about perspective because I'm from a generation where it was, and this is no slap at Auburn, and things have changed, and times have changed, but Tennessee was the big rival. It was the big rivalry for a lot of people. A lot of people who were older when I was young could remember when Alabama didn't even play Auburn, but Tennessee every year was the game. Was the game. I know that's hard. It's been so one-sided now for 12 years. I know it's hard for younger people to remember that, but it was just everything that went into it, the history, even before the NCAA stuff came up, even when Peyton was playing and back in those days, it was just special. It was why that's Alabama's permanent opponent, and Alabama fights to keep that permanent opponent, and Tennessee does too, even though it's not much of a competitive advantage for Tennessee to have to play Alabama every year at this point. But they understand, I think, the tradition and the history that goes into it as well.
We talk about this series, and it has been a series of streaks, as we know, but it just seems like, maybe I'm wrong about this, even in the streaks in which they were in Tennessee's favor, it still seemed like Alabama was competitive. Even in the aughts, that stretch through there in 3 and 4 and 6, in those losses preceding Nick Saban coming on board, Alabama still competed. Those were still pretty much 4-quarter games. Cecil, we really don't have that anymore in this rivalry. It's not just that Alabama has won the games in consecutive fashion like it has. The games just haven't really been all that competitive, although I guess if you're looking for a shred of hope from the Tennessee standpoint of these things, 09 was close here, and 15 was a tight game as well.
Sure.
Maybe that's the angle we need to take in trying to build this game as being something more than one in which Alabama is a 6 touchdown favorite.
Yeah, it's still not the same as and I'm not disparaging anybody, but it's not like when Southern Miss came in last month. There's still again, there's a generation of Alabama fans that will always be cautious about Tennessee. But you're right. There's not been a game there've been a couple of games over the course of 50 years. Peyton had a big game when he led the band at Legion Field, and Tennessee was pretty dominant. But Alabama's always kind of hung in there. They certainly hadn't had any stretch of 35-point losses like Tennessee had between that 09 game that you mentioned and that 15 game when Derek Dooley was the head coach, in between Lane and Butch Jones. I think Julio outscored them over a course of 3 years, just Julio. And so it's been different. It's been an unusual series, but it's one that's got a lot packed into it, and it'll come back. The day will come. Don't know when it'll be. Don't know if it will be as dramatic a turnaround as 2007 was, but the day will come.
Cecil, have we officially reached the point of Tua fatigue nationally? Do you get that sense?
I don't know. I think there'll be. I think right now is the time that people like to have different storylines, but there's weeks, and there's 3 weeks and games in between LSU coming to Alabama, but that's going to settle a lot of the narratives, I think. Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow's had a great year. I thought he had a great game Saturday against Florida. So he may well be the front runner on a day when nobody's voting, but whoever wins that game, particularly if one of the quarterbacks is really dominant in that game, that's going to settle all that. And people are cautious. It's funny, I was coming back from Texas. I was listening to LSU's game on the radio, and their post game, and you could tell their fans, you could tell their announcers and their guys that they want to talk about Alabama. They want to because they're very excited about their team, as they should be. But they know that they've got that Auburn game in there in 2 weeks. They've got a trip to Starkville this weekend that may or may not be difficult for them. But then they've got that Auburn game, and they know they've got it. You can't really look past Auburn. You can't do it. And but if they get through the next 2, it will be 2 weeks of hype, reminiscent for sure of 2011. Maybe more so because people expect such a high-scoring game.
We've talked about it for a few weeks now from a television perspective. Have you heard anything new in terms of how CBS will go about that game if it plays out the way we expect it to, with a 1-2 type of matchup similar to 2011, which ended up being a primetime game from here in Tuscaloosa? Anything else on that, or is it still look destined to be 2:30 football?
I think it's going to be 2:30, but CBS's options are that they've got the 2:30 time slot, and they can put it in the 2:30 time slot. That's a doubleheader that day, but it's an 11-2:30 doubleheader. CBS, ESPN's got the primetime slot, so it's just like if you've got a box of chocolates, Travis. Somebody who's got a box of chocolates, you'll sell that box of chocolates. But if you know that that's the best box of chocolates in the country, and there's not another box of chocolates like it, and the people who want to buy that box of chocolates really want that box of chocolates, you're going to put that price up there, like the ticket man. And so I don't know what ESPN would want. People say, they swapped that. They would want a lot more than an Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Florida swap. A lot more. a lot because it's worth it to them. Otherwise, why would ESPN want to dodge? Why would they want to budge off that primetime slot that day? And CBS has got the game. They've got the rights to the game.
They're going to do big numbers regardless,
they don't have the
right?
To
they're going to do huge numbers.
It's going to do a huge number in the afternoon,
Right.
So they may really want it in prime time. They took Georgia Notre Dame. That wasn't a bad decision, and the game did a good number. But what ESPN would want from their competitor, I don't know that CBS has come up with yet.
I know we both saw this here in the last few minutes on Twitter. The Athletic, with its midseason All-American college football team, the first team, Alabama doesn't have a first team midseason All-American. Cecil, does this mean Nick Saban should be a front runner for one of the National Coach of the Year awards? I mean,
somebody tweeted to me, a friend of mine from New Orleans. It's just amazing what two-star talent can do when you've got five-star heart. When you just ignore the recruiting rankings and put them out there. And I suppose you could justify each pick that there are guys like C.D. Lamb who A, is having a great year, and B, doesn't have to, he doesn't have to spread the cheese around as much as the Alabama receivers do. Or Jedrick Wills, or Xavier McKinney, who also could certainly be on somebody's team. But if the narrative is going to be Alabama just rolls out there with the best players, they just dominate everybody because they have all these number one recruiting classes and they have all the best players. Doesn't one of those guys have to make a team like that? Doesn't one of them? Don't you have to get one guy?
Oh. Well, like you said, it's just a gritty group of guys from Gadsden and Greensboro. Just playing above their heads right now, apparently, Cecil.
Travis, they've got good mamas and papas. Where have I heard that? I just want them to have class. They got good mamas and papas. And, do like I tell them.
Bingo, that's a goodie, right?
Bingo, that's a good. I think he's from Lochipoka, Alabama.
Oh, retro Alabama, apparently. Wow, how about that? No first-team midseason All-Americans. Hey, Cecil, we got some hoops. I mean, we're about to go through a stretch where we pretty much have hoops of some form or fashion, at least an event, an exhibition game, those type of things from about this point forward, don't
we? They released the polls today. Kentucky's the favorite. I didn't vote for Kentucky in part because you never know. I mean, they're going to be good. Let's not kid ourselves. And their freshmen are going to be good. But you speculate so much on their freshmen. So I voted. I don't mind doing this. I voted for Mississippi State. People say, oh, that's crazy. Hey, 2 years ago, Tennessee was picked 13th. And I think Auburn was picked 6th. And they shared it. But Tennessee was 13th and was champion or co-champion, however you want to list that, along with Auburn. So anything could happen. Mississippi State's got the best inside guy. We'll see how Blackshear is, who's transferring in from Virginia Tech to Florida. He's really good, too. But Reggie Perry is, he's like young McDyess. He's really good. They lose Nick Withers. I think Nick's gone and Quindari's back. They got other big guys. They do lose Lamar Peters, but, they'll find a point guard. So I picked a dark horse there. Alabama was about where I picked them. I think they're 6th, and I think I had them 7th. I was a little surprised Kyra didn't make the first team, but looking at the first team, I can see. I had 4 of those guys at Kyra on my first team, so it's not like and we only voted for 5, so it's not like that's some egregious snub that he was probably the top vote getter on the second team. So we shall see. It'll be interesting, but you can take any of, I think, certainly down to, South Carolina's 10th. I think South Carolina's going to have a pretty good team. You've got new coaches. That one at Alabama. You've got new coaches at Arkansas and at A&M. I think people look at Vandy as a long rebuild at Vandy. Not sure anybody knows what Missouri got, although they could be pretty good too. So it's been great the last couple of years in SEC basketball that there's been so much parity, that there's been a surprise Final Four team, there've been surprise champions, whether LSU, whether Auburn, whether Tennessee. But the media is going to vote Kentucky number one, and they're going to be good. This could be the year that the freshmen all come together and they win it.
So we're going to get the LED show Saturday night, Cecil. If you could pick one band or one song, one group to sort of serve as the soundtrack, who would you have for that light show we're going to get Saturday night? I guess the classic, the original light show was Pink Floyd, I guess. Oh yeah.
That's some pretty heavy music for football though. Yeah, that's you're getting into that welcome to the machine. I don't know that students are going to get up and dance to Comfortably Numb. So that's there's so many bands that do a great job of that now, and there are some bands now. Odessa came to Tuscaloosa last year to the amphitheater, and the light guy, the show guy, he's part of the band. It's like John Paul, George, and Ringo, but Ringo is the light guy, does the light show. So there's so many great shows out there now. So something a little bit more up tempo, which all the big acts would have. Justin Timberlake, I'm sure, has a great light show. Who was it that people were telling me that Katy Perry supposedly had the great synced with the wristbands and all of that stuff. So it's some super high tech stuff. And I'll tell you where else you get that. It's the NHL games now. They have a lot of the hockey teams have really good light shows and entertainment. But the classic answer would be Pink Floyd, but I'd go probably somebody more for a big crowd like that, somebody more like a Katy Perry.
Yeah, I think you probably do that. I'm with you though. I mean, if I had to pick one, it's got to be Comfortably Numb to go with the light show, or maybe some Kiss. I think Kiss with some fireworks.
Fully be immersed in the Led Zeppelin or in the Pink Floyd laser show. You got to do some preparation that isn't really legal in Alabama, and so I'm not going to suggest that. Your choice of libation.
Speaking of light shows, they didn't really have one at Sanford Stadium on Saturday, Cecil.
We got to see a good bit of that in the press box. There was a good bit of Oklahoma, Texas, too. But, as South Carolina had the lead at the half and started to hang on, and it got more interesting, more and more people were watching it, of course, because it went into overtime. They switched over. We didn't get to watch overtime. Had to watch it on the Wi-Fi, which was a little bit slow. So knew on Twitter that Blankenship had missed the field goal before actually seeing it happen. But I'm not putting the onus on one player, particularly one that's done a lot of great things for Georgia. That was not Jake Fromm's best day. Not just the interceptions, although certainly the interceptions, including a pick six. And also just missing anything, very shaky at mid-range or deep balls. And, South Carolina did a good job. Kinlaw, I thought, had a great game.
Yeah.
Disrupting up front for them. And I thought when Alabama played up there, I don't know what your thoughts on Alabama, South Carolina was, but I thought their front was good then, and Kinlaw was really good. But Georgia just didn't have the home run hitter on offense. Just didn't. I don't know if that's on Fromm. I don't know if that's on the receivers. I don't know if the running backs are certainly solid, but not of the Chubb, Gurley variety. And they play conservative. Kirby, as a lot of people have observed, Kirby was part of national championship teams in 09 and 11, and that's the way he plays. Like it's 09 or 11.
Yeah. And
the amazing thing about that game is they did it with the quarterback out, with a third-team quarterback. But credit to them, and certainly don't blame Blankenship. Everybody's, kickers should make that. Shouldn't ever come down to that. So, it certainly makes the East a more interesting race, though. It really does.
No doubt about it. And we talk about the kicking woes at Alabama, and certainly it's been an issue throughout the years. And as great as Rodrigo Blankenship has been, you talk about two big misses. The one against Alabama in the third quarter last December, I think it was a 28-14 game. He misses from 32, 33 yards. That goes to 31-14 potentially. And then the miss on Saturday. You're right, though. I mean, when you've got the better team as clearly as Georgia had, it never should have come down to it. Well, Cecil, we got to get out of here for a break. But as always, man, we really appreciate the time. Look forward to catching up with you again next week. Thanks a lot, Cecil.
All right, Travis. Talk to you then.